Okay, so for challenge 32, this one is actually quite difficult to get your head around. It uses some iteration, so there's some repetition that's actually in the program, and it takes a little bit of it takes a while for you to kind of get your head around how this actually works. So what we're going to do is just take it step by step, and hopefully this will help you and it will make sense. So it says Norma would like to invest her savings in a bank account that generates the most money. She would like a program that will allow her to enter the amount of money she wants to save, input the number of bank accounts she wants to compare, enter the interest rate for each account, and then the interest is calculated by dividing the money to be saved by 100 and then multiplying this by the interest rate. The total is calculated by adding the money to be saved to the interest and then outputted. The program should repeat this for all bank accounts. So what we're going to do is just break that down a little bit so that it makes a bit more sense. So first of all, it says enter the amount of money. So we know that that is going to be a variable and it's going to be an input. So that is our first input. Then it says input the number of bank accounts. So we're going to put number of accounts and enter the interest rate. Now this is where it goes a little bit more complicated, because we're going to enter the interest rate for every bank account that she wants to do. So that is only based on how many accounts that she wants. It tells us how to calculate the interest. So we've got to divide by 100 and then multiply by the interest rate. So that's going to be our calculation. And then it says the total is calculated by adding the money to be saved to the interest. And then it says repeat. So whenever we see the word repeat, you need to think about what type of loop that we're going to use. Are we going to do a count controlled loop? Are we going to do a condition controlled loop? Is it a for loop or a while loop? So in this particular case, we know how many times we want to repeat the code, but that is based on the number of bank accounts she wants to compare. So let's make a start on this, and hopefully it starts to make a little bit of sense. So from the beginning, we want to put the amount of money, and that could be pounds and pence, so we're going to put it as a float. And the message just needs to be something like enter how much you want to save. Okay, now the next input is how many bank accounts that you want to compare. So we're going to say number of accounts. Now that does need to be an integer because you can't have half an account. Okay, so that's our first two inputs. Now the next input says enter the interest rate for each account, but we want to do that on repeat. So what we're going to do is we're going to start our for loop. So now that we've asked those two inputs at the beginning, they aren't really going to change through the program. Once you've input them, they're going to stay the same. So as the loop begins, we can put in now a for loop. The next thing that you put in is normally I. You will see for I quite a lot. I is basically a variable, and it's a counter that starts at 0 unless you specify otherwise. So what we're going to do is just call it for I in range, and normally whatever number you stick in here is how many times it's going to repeat. But we don't know how many times it's going to repeat until they've typed in the number of accounts. So we're just going to put the number of accounts as the amount of times that we want to repeat. So it's basic substitution. Whatever they type in, let's say they type in 3 for number of accounts, then 3 goes into the brackets here. And this loop will loop round 3 times. So anything I put underneath now is going to repeat 3 times. So at this point is where we need to get them to type in the interest rate. So we're going to say rate equals float input, enter interest rate, and then we're going to do the calculation. So it says here, divide the money by 100 and then multiply it by the interest rate. So we're going to divide our amount by 100 first and multiply it by the rate. Then the total is amount plus interest. Now you're basically just going to repeat those 3 lines of code over and over and over again. But I want to make sure that I print out the total. So I'm also going to say this account would give you okay, so this is going to repeat 3 times if I put 3 in, and we're going to give it a little test now to see if it works. So first of all, let's just give it a nice easy number. 100 is how much I want to save, and I want to compare 3 accounts. So first thing is asking me for the interest rate for the first one, so I'm going to say 3.4, and it says this account will give you 103.4. Now it's asking for the next account, so let's say the next one's 4.1, and let's say the next one's 5.6. So it basically works exactly as it asks you. Let me just double check. Total is calculated by adding the number. Program should repeat this for all bank accounts. Yeah, it does exactly what it asks you to do, and that will work for however many number of accounts that they want you to do. And I'm just going to put that in to make it easier. I'm going to just test it again with a larger number. So let's say you've got 10,000 and you want to compare 5 accounts, and we can put any interest rates in and it will work. Okay, now as an actual program, it's not really the best. Obviously you can see how much money you're going to make off the different interest things, but it would probably be better if you added all of those amounts into a list of some sort, and then maybe it tells you what the highest one is at the end. But for this actual algorithm challenge, that is all it is asking you to do. If it did want you to add them all into a list, you could create a blank list called accounts, for example, and then for each one you could get it to append into the list. So you could say accounts dot append total, and that will add in all of the different amounts, and then at the very end you could get it to just print out what is in accounts. Like so, and then when you've got that list, then you can compare the different values. And if you wanted to make it a 2-dimensional list, then you could start adding all of the values in. You could have like the name of the account and the interest, and you could sort it by how much is in there. So that just starts to make the program a little bit more efficient and a little bit more useful. But for that particular algorithm, that's all it asks for, so we're just going to leave it like that.